Today's guest is Chris Kolodziejski. He's the founder and visionary behind Chella. His journey from a finance graduate and NFL draft pick to a successful entrepreneur is as inspiring as the brand he created. Following a football career-ending injury, he explored various ventures before discovering his passion for skincare. So in 2003, he launched Chella, and in 2016, he transformed the company, committing to a vegan, cruelty-free, and sustainable beauty. So with a focus on inclusivity, diversity, and social responsibility, Chris has built a brand that empowers women to feel confident and beautiful. Chella's mission is to support dreams, aspirations, and transformation, embodying the belief that beauty truly transforms. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the show, Chris. I am so excited to talk to you.
Stephanie, I am just as thrilled and just love when you talk about what you're about, which is mission-driven good and finding and exploring that. And we're honored to be on your show. And I just love the positive energy that I found when I met you at Vegan Women's Summit, and that is greeting me again today. So thank you for the great welcome and intro. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I feel like most of my podcast interviews, probably for the first 20 interviews, are me saying to the person, I met you at the Vegan Women's Summit, because I met so many great people there and was so inspired with all of these different businesses. And honestly, I had just been forming the idea for my podcast at that time. And it was really through that event that I solidified exactly what it was going to be about, because I was like, I'm meeting all of these great entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, new businesses, and I wanted to be able to give them a voice to really get the message out about what they're doing. Because, it's not only important as far as an entrepreneur, but the back message too of like, hey, you know what? You can have a successful business that is strategically, built on ethical, compassionate, and sustainable, missions. That's really what, we're about here. So, your story fit right in. And I did tell you right before we started recording that, you have done so many interviews. I had such a wealth of knowledge about you. I don't even know if we need to go back over it all, except for the little part. So I did mention in the intro, you did actually start your career as a professional football player for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, by the way, I think I forgot to mention, I'm from Philadelphia, but we'll talk about that later. But I was really admired that, you were able to take something like a career-ending injury, and instead of sitting there and saying, well, what am I going to do? You really launched right into the entrepreneur field. I mean, you went through finance and real estate and then discovered skincare. So tell us a little bit about how you landed specifically on that as, what you wanted to start building as your business.
Yeah, for sure. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. I love the part about how you shared personally when you went to the Vegan Women's Summit. You kind of had an epiphany and this moment when it all hit you that this is what you needed to do. And I know one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was how do entrepreneurs make and launch and start their businesses? And that's it. When you find your passion, when you find your purpose, the universe opens up to you and presents you with the opportunity, and it's right there in front of you. And you kind of put your arms around it and brought it all together and made it happen. So kudos to you for finding that direction. But if we're close to it, we don't see it. So you got to be careful what you ask for, because sometimes it gets thrown right at you. And you're like, oh yeah, that really was what I was trying to manifest or trying to create. So I wanted to make sure we covered that, because it was such a great personal story about what you did right there in the moment to make it happen. So I think the question was, how did I get into skincare after pro football?
Yeah, how did you land on skincare? Because you landed on it before, I'm going to say, YouTube really blew it up. I mean, you started back in, what was it, 2003?
Yes.
And YouTube had not blown up the makeup industry like it is now. So you
Yeah.
were like a true groundbreaker back then. So tell us, like, how did you decide on this, that you were going to move forward? And then I want to talk about like how you were able to do it.
Sure. So I started, I got my degree in finance. So with that, after football, and everybody who plays football knows it could be a day, it could be a week, it could be for 10 years. And mine was for just over a year. And then I got a career-ending injury. So I had watched my mom growing up create this career for herself in commercial real estate development. And so I knew I was going to be in development of some kind. And so when I got done playing, I literally went out to Malibu. I saw every piece of raw land there was out there, bought a property, built a home on it. Thankfully, it did extremely well, and that launched my real estate development career, which 10 years after that moved into investment banking, corporate finance. And 10 years after that, after I'd helped fund all these dreams for other people, I knew that I wanted to found my own company. And so there are two parts to this story. One was kind of like what I'll call my conscious mind. The conscious mind was, I don't want to be in a business that will be subject to a recession. So I want something recession proof. So that's basically alcohol, sex, or cosmetics, and kind of in that order, right? One begets the other. So I didn't want to be involved in the first two, and the third one, I'm like, okay, great, I can do that. Great margins and recession proof. So when things are tough, people still will, gravitate to one of those three, especially with cosmetics. So that kind of led me down that path. And then I started doing due diligence and research. I hired a chemist. I met with a bunch of labs. What are the cutting edge ingredients that make skincare great? And that had to do with amino acids and peptide chains and things that actually had communication properties that would go into the skin and stimulate the skin and collagen and elastin and fibrins to grow and rejuvenate. And that was kind of where I decided, wow, this excites me. This is something new, and I can build a brand, and it can be my own company. And I'd done, when you just come right out of pro football and you buy a piece of land and you hire a contractor and you build a home. After that, you kind of had the mindset, whatever I set my mind to, I could do. But I've always had great people around me. So it's never so much about me. So I had an idea. I brought great people in. They helped me, support me, and kind of gave me the confidence as a team to move forward. So
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the fact that, you really saw your mom first as an entrepreneur doing what she was doing. Because like I said, I've read your backstory. I know your parents got divorced and then your mom's on her own and she's figuring out, what she's going to do. And, that was really amazing for her to take that leap because, back in the day for women, honestly, there were very little opportunities as far as what the entrepreneur route was going to be. There was like Mary Kay and Avon and things like that. But, those are really honestly, not the biggest money makers, for women.
yeah.
So to see your mom get into real estate at that time must have been truly inspiring for you because that's really got to show you that people have to be very passionate and very willing to do the work. So along those lines, so like I said, we know that you started this company way back in early 2000s. It's a whole different industry now. I almost feel like it might be easier for people because they don't have to do the groundwork. But when you were starting out, even though a successful football player, I mean, what did you do for funding? Like, did you have to go out and get investors? Did you just bootstrap it? Like, what was your journey like? Because right now, seeing you as super successful, people are just going to say, NFL player, super easy for him, not hard. So tell us really what it was like for you.
It was so hard. It was bootstrap out of the garage, out of the kitchen, out of the dining room. The first fills we disinfected in the the dishwasher and filled on the dining room table and operated the warehouse out of the garage and an office in the house dedicated to that. It was a lot of my own seed money to start, but then realized as we grew, had to have additional capital, and then that was private individual investors, angel investors.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the pre-questions was talk about funding and how that works. And as an entrepreneur, one of the best pieces of advice I ever received is you can never not be in fundraising mode. Never not be in fundraising mode. Even if you got all the money and you want and you're profitable, let's say there's this opportunity to buy a company and the industry's solid and that sector and the company's worth 10 times more than you are, but you could double the revenues because of the insights that you have. How are you going to buy that company if you don't have investment bankers, if you don't have financial advisors, if you're not familiar with the cash flow and the different structures of debt? You might miss that opportunity. But if you have those people and you're talking to them and you say, hey, I got this idea and here's this company and what do you think? And they can help you put the capital structure together and help provide the liquidity. All of a sudden, the world's your oyster. So that's the advice, is never not be in a fundraising mode or having discussions or talking. And by the way, the same thing goes for hiring. Even if you have your full assorted team, you should always be thinking about people you would like to hire. Who's the next hire? What's the next strategic place you're going to go? Who is that person? How are you going to find them? Do you already have a list of 3 or 4 people you're trying to interview for that position? So as you grow, you kind of already got folks potentially slotted into those positions.
Yeah. Well, I'm really, really glad you said that, Chris, because first I'm going to throw the gender card into it. We
Okay.
all know that women are way more conservative when it comes to business. And let me tell you, the number one thing I talk to new female business owners is when talking about funding, they are afraid of it. They're afraid to ask, they're afraid to look for help, to ask for help. They're afraid to get investors and things like that. But when I talk to men, they're not afraid on that level. They're like, no, I'll take on an investor, or I'll look for people to invest in my company. And that's something I've been very passionate about, especially talking to all these new entrepreneurs, is like, no, like if you really want to grow your company, you have to think about where you're going to get the money to do the next step. Because I see so many people get stuck at that start level and never be able to build into like an international brand like you are. Because people look at success stories on Instagram now and everybody wants that overnight success. They think they do one post and then all of a sudden it's just sales, sales, sales. And like you said, you always have to be in fundraising mode. And I also want to add to that, you also always have to be in marketing mode, which I think as a marketer, you have done a beautiful job of. First of all, you're interviewed everywhere, which is great. You're not afraid to put yourself out there. And not only that, I saw the trajectory, the change of your brand from the start to where you are now, of really embracing new messages and things like that. Before I launch into that, I really have to ask quickly, because I couldn't find this information. Where did the company name come from, Chella?
Oh gosh, I was traveling in Europe when I was in the home building stage, building homes in Malibu, and I needed a bunch of marble and travertine. So I went to Italy with a marble mason. I flew him there so we could go literally to Carrara, to the mountain to buy the marble, to go to Siena to buy the travertine, and I got these amazing prices because I was buying container loads direct, bypassing all of the distribution in the U.S. and just fell in love with the country. So I don't know, it was 15 years later, I get involved in cosmetics and I wanted the company to be about positive affirmations. So the idea was I wanted to call the company Hello Beautiful. When you opened up the box, there'd be a little on the tab, it would say Hello Beautiful. And so, but unfortunately the mark was taken. And so I went to my trademark attorney and I said, well, what could we do? And I brainstormed and said, well, can we call it Ciao Bella, which is Hello Beautiful? And he goes, Chris, when you translate Ciao Bella, it translates to Hello Beautiful. You can't do that. I said, well, let's mash it together. Let's call it Chella. And that's kind of how I came up with it.
Oh, I love that. And I feel like I got an exclusive. I literally couldn't find that anywhere. And I'm like, where did, and I honestly thought maybe that's his mom's name, I don't know, but I like your story so much better. So
Thank you.
let's run with that one. That's great.
Okay.
Okay. So let's touch on the fact now that Chella is actually one of the leading vegan, cruelty-free, sustainable brands out there. We're going to get all into the sustainability because, oh my God, you were rocking my world. But you yourself, if I read correctly, you've been vegan now for about 5 years.
Actually, since 2017. And I don't know if it was 2017 or 2016, but you called that number out. I went through a health scare. So I had always been told by my doctor, you're going to get diabetes because it's genetic, because my grandmother had it, because my dad had it. I was going to get it because it's genetic. That's such a medical fallacy. I guess put the caveat there. I'm not a doctor. This isn't doctor's advice. There's nothing genetic about diabetes. Diabetes is a function of diet. And you can make somebody diabetic very quickly by putting them on kind of the standard American diet, which stands for SAD, because it's truly sad. So I had really, really good blood markers, and I go every year because, that's what you do. And all of a sudden, boom, I'm in this. I went from normal 5.5 A1C to 9.5. Anything over 6.5 is considered diabetic, and A1C is the kind of the magic marker they check. And my cholesterol was super high. And everything just exploded in that one year. And so the doctor gave me all these prescriptions, metformin and all this other stuff. He said, big changes, you got to do all this stuff. So my fiance now, Sarah, my girlfriend at the time, she said, we both were really health conscious about what we did for our daily routines and healthy eating. She said, I don't think you need to do that. There's got to be an alternative. There's got to be a natural way to do this. So we read a book by Dr. Greger that she found that she had at the house, which was called How Not to Die. And it basically was, if you have any one of these 35 diseases, you should do this so you don't die. And they had a chapter on diabetes. And I read it and I literally looked at her and said, I'm going to become a vegan tomorrow. And within 90 days, my A1C went from like 9.5 back down to like 5.8. My cholesterol went from like 275 to 175, and all my markers instantly fell back in line. Now, there's been, game changers, there's been fasting, there's been some amazing documentaries that have come out in that 7 years, but nutritionfacts.org is probably the seminal place to go for information about healthy eating and double-blind clinical trials and what medicines work and what don't. And there's so much, I'm going to call it BS out there, because it's a business. Pharmacies make their business. Pharmaceutical companies make their business out of fear and telling you the only way that you can heal yourself is by taking this pill. The reality is how you heal yourself is by addressing the underlying problem. And when you do that, you can actually heal yourself. So the underlying problem for diabetics, I know I'm on a rant, it's not sugar. It's saturated fat that blocks your cells' ability to process sugar. You have high blood sugar because your cells are filled with fat. So when you get rid of dairy and all the animal products and all the animal fat, all of a sudden your body starts working and you can process sugar and your diabetes goes away. That's metabolically how it works.
Yeah. Okay, so I can see where you're coming from as far as the health thing, but then you took it a step further and said, I'm going to turn my already successful company into a vegan, cruelty-free, sustainable company, which has nothing to do with your own personal health. So how did you make that leap then, that you said that because if veganism for you was more, health related, how did you get into my actual brand? My makeup is also going to be vegan, cruelty-free, sustainable.
Such a great question. Thank you, Stephanie. It really came down to compassion. Selfishly, I did these things for myself. And as I got embedded into the vegan community, I started to realize really that animals are sentient beings. Cows cry, pigs cry. They're your friends and we're eating them. And so it was a massive shift for me to go from, I went to school in Wyoming. I used to be a hunting guide and kill animals and eat them, literally skin them and eat them. Horrible kind of, but that's what I did when I was 18 and 19 and 20 years old, because that was the thing that you did 40 years ago. So the evolution is really compassion and realizing that these are sentient beings, that it's not really our place to be killing animals for food. It is incredibly, detrimental to their life, but also to our environment. I mean, we're, cutting down the rainforest at a record rate to grow beef. Most of the beef in the US now comes from Brazil. And it's so needless because you're asking the cow to eat grass and then you kill the cow to eat its meat when, all the protein is in natural products and, tofu and beans and greens and rice and all those things. We can get we can change our dependency on animal proteins into vegan proteins.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff. So it came out of compassion. I realized this is really not good for our environment. It's not good for our society. And I want to be able to try to, evolve myself. And so I thought this is going to be a great step, something that I can actually have a platform to talk about.
Yeah. And I mean, that's honestly, one of the things that me, just as a consumer, really draws me to brands or products at this point, because I've been vegan now actually since 2016, which is funny if that's your year too.
Huh.
Prior to that, I had turned vegetarian when I was 16 years old in high school because I was introduced to PETA. And this was back before social media or the internet really, exploded. I will date myself. I am 53 years old. I did not grow up with the internet. And I was given a PETA magazine, and on the cover were the bunnies that they used in the testing laboratories. And I still get goosebumps because the visual is still so fresh in my mind. And I was like, how is this allowed? How do people not talk about this? So I
Wow.
spent most of my life as what was called, vegetarian, eating dairy and eggs. And then when I learned the true horrors of what that even entailed, I was like, oh, I didn't know cows had to be pregnant to produce milk because I'm from Philadelphia. I
Right.
live in a city. Honestly, I don't think I ever saw a cow in person until I was 22 years old.
Wow.
That's the message now that we're like getting out to people like, do you understand how biology works? And
Yeah.
people don't because we
Right.
become so efficient now and so removed from things that we don't understand where things come from. So again, going back to you and Chella, the fact that you guys are like so into the sustainability, let's talk about what I now call the conscious consumer. And these are people like me and you that really look at stuff and look at companies before we buy it. Because I find that all over your messaging now, which I love. So
Thank
tell
you.
me a little bit now how you know, I don't want to say work it into your marketing because it's not like just, like a marketing ploy for you guys. Um, Tell me what that really means for you guys to have that sustainability aspect. I mean, I know you've gone even a step further regarding packaging and how your products are created. Right before we got on, I had talked to Chris about how YouTube really blew up the beauty industry. I blame YouTube for like pretty much 80% of the waste in the world now because of the makeup industry, because everything's like a plastic vial. But you, Chris and Chella, are now taking aim at that. So tell us about how you've built sustainability into the ethos of Chella.
Yeah, thank you. I think it started, again, it goes back to the whole vegan thing, and it's not just for my personal health, but it was for raising consciousness. And if you're going to be concerned about the planet, then you look at that holistically and go, how can I be a mother to the earth? What can I do? Sounds kind of woo-woo, but truly the impact that we make is significant. So the first two things that I want to do is I wanted us to get plastic neutral and carbon neutral. And so, we partnered with a company that does that. And then all of our packaging is FSB. So it's reforested paper so that we can be as light as possible. We drive Teslas, the savings in terms of energy and efficiency that go with that. So just everything about my life, I just started to shift. And if it's going to be happening for me, it's going to be happening for the company because it's, the kind of symbiotic, they're the same, right? I can't live one thing and do another. So I wanted that to all fall in line. But thank you for noticing and caring, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to have that voice to share about that. We look at the whole thing holistically. What are we doing, like on not only packaging but ingredients? So this is not mandatory, and we started this process a couple of years ago. But we're EU, UK registered and compliant across the whole EU, UK, Health Canada, Prop 65, state of California, which is the strongest rules and regs for cosmetic, especially if you're a manufacturer here in the state. Extremely tough, Prop 65 compliant. So we touch all the bases in terms of, making sure that our ingredient decks are absolutely as clean as possible. And if you're going to do that, then you better, pay attention to carbon and plastic neutral. And then there's a couple of charities that are very near and dear to our heart that we support as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too, again, as small business owners are starting out, they look around and they say, well, how do I find that stuff out? And really what you have to do is you have to ask your suppliers, right? You have to be involved in figuring out where your products are sourced from. And again, I know you guys have done a lot of that. And didn't you partner with a group called the Impact Collective? Are you still
Yes.
working with them?
Yeah, that's the group that is helping us with the carbon and plastic neutral. And big kudos to our partners because they've initiated significant sustainability tracks in terms of revamping their entire supply chain. So we're going through a clean beauty certification for all of our products. That's going to take a couple of years and cost lots of money. But they go back to the source raw material of every country, of every ingredient, everything, and source that is not the child labor, no child labor laws were broken, that they are practicing clean sustainability at that factory level so that every part of the supply chain, those products and those ingredients are being monitored and measured. And then you can get a clean beauty certification on that. And that's also we work with Vioris out of the EU and UK. They're our certification agency for compliance and registration.
Awesome. Yeah, like I said, the conscious consumer is just rising and rising. I know for me, I mean, I'm meticulously looking at everything because I know every single one of our actions and our purchases and our consumption always has some kind of, weight on the world. But to minimize that means a lot. And I know that, the generations that are coming up, Alpha and Z and everything, they really look at that stuff and they pay attention to that stuff. They're not sitting there anymore like in the dark, like, I don't know what this means. I don't know that a cow has to be pregnant to produce milk. Like I didn't know, honestly. And I know my teachers in school are probably like, wow.
But
But
you
I
know it
mean,
now.
how would I know it being in Philadelphia? But with that said, then, so the beauty industry is super competitive now, as you know. Skincare super competitive. There's like a new brand launched every single day. What are you guys doing to stay on top of the trends and really to, keep yourself, I think, top of the leaderboard as far as brands because there's so many similarities. Like, what are you doing to differentiate yourself besides the cruelty-free and sustainability? Like, how do you think about new products or new markets to develop?
Yeah, great question again, Stephanie. Thanks. We had a setback in 2015. Somebody broke into our warehouse and literally stole all of our skincare and all of our brow and eye collection. So at that time, up through 2015, we were half brows and eyes and the other half skincare.
Mm-hmm.
And we were well insured, but we were still out of the market for 8 months because that took us that long to get everything reformulated and repackaged. And we used that as a chance to reset. But we only had enough budget really to come back with the brow and eye collection. So part of it was making sure that we had an intense focus. So it's important as an entrepreneur that whatever you do, you pick that segment where you are completely aligned with that segment and what those customer needs are. So for us, we ended up doing a deep dive on research. Like we have hundreds of customers that have bought from us 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 times. And so we interviewed 21-hour interviews with customers, anywhere from 20 to 70 reorders. We interviewed them to find out why were they with us? Like we didn't know. So we had to go through that discovery. And then we did 1,000 same kind of interviews, but it was a written interview where they would fill it out and then send it back to us. So we got a lot of data, but we weren't directly talking to them. So it's directional. It's not, quantitative, but it's qualitative. So quant would be, I got 10,000 interviews. Now I know, right? You absolutely have certainty, but you can get a lot of direction from qualitative analysis, which is kind of what we did. And I would suggest to entrepreneurs that when you find your segment, the greatest insights in the world about trends are going to come from customers. Talking to customers. I know 2 specific CEO stories where they were starting up, and one of them was a soda company that's now in Costco that this woman entrepreneur built into $1 billion company. Shame on me because I can't remember her name, but I remember her story. And her doctor had said, you're drinking all this processed refined sugar and all this other stuff, and it's creating your diabetes. You need to get rid of it. And she goes, well, I can't. I have to have something sweet to drink. So she created a drink that would not spike her glycemic index. And that was off of a personal need, but her customers were affirming it, saying, I needed something that's not going to jack my blood sugar. And when she changed her messaging to that one specific particular segment, her brand exploded and caught fire. So those insights come from customers. In our particular case that you asked, we work with a lot of high-end spas, Four Seasons, Ritz, JW Marriott, Waldorf Astoria, Mario Tricoci in Chicago, where our experience is about how do we make your customer feel and look their best right before they leave. So they went in there for a facial. They went in there for a blow dry or a cut and color. And our suggestion to our partners is give them a complimentary brow fill. Let's just touch your brows up for 60 seconds. And if you got brows that are sparse or thin or you're missing some and somebody fills in your brows, you're like, wow, that looks great. So now the last thing you did for that customer was make them feel and look great. It's more about the emotion. And when the emotion is touched, then they're going to get up out of the chair. Gosh, Stephanie, what was that pencil you used? I need to get one of those dark, dazzling dark brown pencils. And the sale just comes naturally. So when we are talking to those professionals that see hundreds of customers a month, and we ask them about trends and what are the customers leaning towards. We got such a crazy insight the other day by visiting a professional who shared with us. I don't have one on my desk. You know our deluxe heated eyelash curler? It's got the
Yes.
silicone wand on it. Well, she does laminations for a living, and we were showing her how to do her eyelash curl with our deluxe heated eyelash curler with the silicone wand. And she goes, "Oh my God." She starts brushing it through her brows. She goes, "This would be perfect to improve my lamination."
Wow.
Why am I going to learn that? I mean,
Right.
I've only had that thing for 5 years. I never thought of that. It was such a great thing. So now, of course, we got to create some TikToks and some YouTube videos around using this tool in a way that's never been used before. And that's the kind of stuff that can catch fire
Yeah.
because you're changing the game. And people see the same game and the same rhythm and the same music, but when you could put something new to it, a spin on it that works, then all of a sudden, it can become viral. So I was hesitant to even share that with you, but I got to give you some drop to this service you got
Oh,
to.
I love it, Chris. So, you see me on camera now, so you know I am a brow girl. I will let you know, when I was in grade school, I had like full on Brooke Shields kind of brows, just real big brushy things, which of course I just plucked within an inch of my life because it was the 80s and things
Right.
like that. But now
The 80s
brows are a
killed a lot of
thing.
brands.
But now we do realize, like you said, that it can really change the look of your face. And the other thing I really loved about your beauty line was like, you almost say, like, you know what? You're beautiful without us. This just, if you just need a little pick me up just to, give you a little confidence, then you use this. And I really love that you weren't, it wasn't just pushing like beauty because you had to look a certain way, because we're in a whole new conversation now, as you
Yeah.
know. Everything's becoming more gender neutral. Guys are wearing makeup too. Girls are realizing you don't have to go out of the face with what my mom would call your face on,
Right.
right? Like you can go out with just your skin. That was like amazing to me a couple of years ago when I finally was like, fuck it. I'm in my 50s. I don't have time to put makeup on and I'm going out, because like
Yeah.
before, for a girl not to be, you were kind of like, you felt like you were losing your edge a little. I want to jump back to the whole gender thing, because yes, everything's really pushing now to be very gender neutral, which I love. But I will let you know, when I was in high school and grade school, my dad was very into just looking good all the time. He was a conductor on Amtrak on the East Coast. So he always looked very spiffy in his conductor suit, very important, just a good looking guy. He started using some of our makeup and our skincare in high school because he realized that it made him look better. It made him feel better. If he wasn't like having like the greatest day, to have a little color on his face, like, just blush or like be able to have like some, what do you call, foundation, he felt better about himself. So he did. He used our makeup. And I've seen some brands really start branching out to where they're trying to do, like, let's say the straight line of makeup. Like I said, we're going very gender neutral. I myself love nail polish on men. I don't know where that comes from. But in terms of what, again, going to design trends, do you see yourself branching any more out into like hitting more of that straight male market?
Um, I think right now, 10% of our customers are already men. And we got a lot of great male makeup artists that create content for us. In fact, Juan is a guy that makes a lot of great content. And Ron, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your last name, but he's a great, he used to work for us as an intern. But I call him out just because he's a great guy and he does great looks. The Asian and Korean market guys are really in and very acceptable to put makeup on, foundation, blush, maybe brows. For us, regardless of gender, our complete focus is brows and eyes. So we got some advice from a female investment banker some time ago when this is probably about 10 years ago, and was talking to her about the brand. And she goes, "Well, where do you see this going?" I said, "Well, we're going to do foundation, we're going to do lipstick, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." That's Anastasia followed that path very successfully. Benefit followed that path, both billion-dollar companies. And she said to me, she said something very profound. She goes, "If you focus just on brows and eyes, I could see you not in 1,000 or 2,000 doors. You could be 20,000 doors. You could be global because you will be the brow and eye experts."
Mm.
So that's really the path that we've taken. We're in R&D right now on a tinted eyebrow gel that will have vegan microfibers in, which is incredibly hard to do. But we've now sourced that. We've been in R&D on that for about 2 years. Hopefully it's going to come out in about the second quarter next year. But anything that has anything to do with brows and eyes. So guy or gal, we love them. And whoever wants to use the products, we're there to give you training and education and teach you how to look and feel your best. And to your point about not wearing makeup, a big part of our affirmation is looking natural to natural enhanced. That literally all you need is a swipe of our brow gel. No color, no nothing. Just get your brows taped, go out the door. Or, our eyebrow pencil, quick pencil in and set your brows. And it really transforms your look. Well, I mean, why do guys that are bald with no hair want fuller, thicker hair? Makes you look younger. Same thing for every part of your face. If you got thick, full brows, you immediately look younger and more vibrant. And my fiance is 51, and she plucked her brows in the 80s. They grew back. She kept them thin 10 years ago. And then I took her to a brow bar where we have one of our artists working, and I had her brows done. And she didn't want to go outside because they were so thick for her. She is so used to having these razor thin brows. Now you will never see her without the brows completely full. And she was bemoaning the fact this morning, she'll kill me for sharing this. She goes, I'm losing my brows. They're falling out. That post-menopausal women, that's what happens. That's nature.
Welcome to your 50s.
Yeah, welcome to your 50s, along with everything else that's going on. So anyway, natural to natural enhance. Fill in your brows, you're gonna look younger, period. And then go seize the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as far as like easy stuff for guys to do, like whether you're, gender neutral or whatever, or consider yourself straight, I think, it's great to be able to have those tools available to them as well. Because, hey, even guys look really way better with like a manicured eyebrow instead of like a crazy eyebrow look. And I love that we're having that conversation now with everything. There's just so many new things coming down the line. I'm really, embrace this whole, like I said, gender neutrality. Everybody gets to try, because I myself have loved makeup my entire life. I had very like liberal parents. I was allowed to wear makeup in grade school. My mom was always like highlighting our hair. I did share with you, I went to a private Catholic academy.
Yeah.
The nuns were not as happy about the highlighted hair as my mom was. In fact, I think we probably got called into the principal's office for it. But it was always just stuff that was fun and made us feel better. So, with that said, let me ask you, what's been your most satisfying moment so far as a let's say entrepreneur? Because I still consider you an entrepreneur because you have so many great ideas coming down the line. Like, what's been your most satisfying moment?
Oh, Stephanie, so many. I think right now it's that Chella, by the way, overnight success 20 years later, right? So none of this, is easy, and it takes a lot of time. And I've seen some shooting stars, and, congrats and applaud them. And they've gone from, Kylie Jenner, look what she's done, become a billion-dollar brand in, I don't know, 5 years. So it's possible. Anything's possible. So I want to have that as a parameter. But for us, it's 20 years, and we still have so much more to do. And I feel like we're still just getting started. But to answer your question, I think the most gratifying thing is to see Chella now accepted globally, to see it in, these incredible spas and salons, to have built these partnerships where we have access to their customers and now can empower their customers. So for me, my journey started, and how I got to play pro football was I set an intention. I'm going to do this. I put on a uniform, and I had this moment of transformation, and then I started to manifest. So when I put the uniform on, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't get hurt. I'm like Superman. That's what you think in the third grade until you get knocked down. It's just pads. But that transformation occurred, and it stuck with me, that feeling of how I felt when I had that uniform on. So imagine the first time you're a woman or a guy and you put makeup on and you look in the mirror and you go, oh my God, I'm beautiful. That's the part that we get to bring to so many people. So many people, half the people we put in the chair, they're reluctant. Oh, I don't touch my brows. I don't do anything with them. I like them like this. We put them in the chair and we transform their look, and they're like, wow, I love this. So they pop out of the chair and they whip their hair around and like, I feel good. That's a beautiful thing when you can help somebody like that. And then, as part of our messaging about being vegan, about being cruelty-free, about being clean, about caring for the environment, we talk about those things. So now I have this ability to casually talk about why we are who we are, so I can find more of my tribe. If you're an entrepreneur, you want to find your tribe. And when you tell people who you are, your tribe comes to you. Like you came to us, you're our tribe, you're our peeps. And we love that. And we love you. We're so grateful for you. And all the people that are going to see this as a result of you, now people know what we're about. I'm actually about personal empowerment. I'm actually about, you being able to set an intention and transform and manifest it, and that you already have the power within you to create. You just don't know it. It's always been there. So part of it is let it loose.
Yeah, that's so important, especially like when you're just starting out in business, and something that, I mentioned like early on with you is just, I want to be able to give anyone who's out there listening to this podcast the confidence and the tools to be able to, like, you know what, I have this idea and I'm going to go and see how I can develop it. Like, don't be afraid, don't be held back, because, success comes in different levels for different people. And I know you used the example of celebrity earlier. I don't consider celebrities real people. So any success they have, it's not what I hold up to my goal, because they have tools and advantages and opportunities that are perhaps not available to, let's just say, like a regular person like me or you. So I
Sure.
really look to entrepreneurs like you. Like, even though you were in the NFL did not help you start a business.
Well, it
That
wasn't a playground for learning how to do women's cosmetics.
no, not at all. But it was a playground for learning how to get knocked down and get back up, no
That's
matter how
true.
much pain you were in.
Yeah.
So, with that, I have my final question for you then is, personally, for Chris, what is your definition of personal success? I'm not saying success for Chella. For you personally, what is success?
That's the greatest question for all of us, right? For me, it's happiness, it's peace, it's surrounding myself with positive people. No vampires, people that are negative that want to suck life out of you. You need to get them out of your life. So and being able to share, like, we're sharing today. So I think that's my definition of success, and that, you're talking about entrepreneurs, and everybody can do it, and they can. You just never know when that moment of your being able to have the financial side of the success. Everything that you do is a success, whether you make it financially or not for that particular endeavor, because you got all those learnings. So everything is an experiment towards taking you down a path to learn more, because you don't know whether it's going to be the first startup, the third startup, or the fifth startup that's going to make it. But if that's your passion and path, then just keep creating, and the one that's supposed to be will be. But it takes all those failures, and I'll call them learnings because that's a better word for it, to get to the point where it finally, you push it over the top and you have, quote, the financial success. But I think if you're grinding just for the money, you're missing life. The grind is the grind. You have to find happiness in the moment of every day. And
Yeah.
that's why it's so important you choose what you decide that you want to spend your time on, because that's all you have. Only thing you have in life is your time. So make
Yeah,
sure.
and let me just tie this all back to the Vegan Women's Summit, because it's funny that you answered the question in that way, because just on my Instagram yesterday for Boomtown Marketing, I posted a quote that I got from Jenny, who is the founder of, Vegan Women's Summit. And what she said was, the usual metrics of success don't really cut it if you don't have any joy in life. And I was like, that's absolutely true. Everything we say is success, money or houses or cars or whatever. If you don't have joy in your day or what you're doing, that you're not successful. And I think you just tied that up perfectly.
Oh,
So
thank you.
with that said, Chris, thank you so much for talking with us. You have been such an amazing and joyful and interesting guest. Like I said, I did so much reading on you. I feel like I like am your best buddy at this point. But let's just tell our audience real quickly where they can find you and Chella, and maybe, yeah, that was tell us where we can find you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie. It's been absolutely my joy to be able to share with you and your audience today. And thank you so much for the opportunity. For the Chella Bellas out there, it's www.chella, Chella.com, Chella.com, to be able to buy. If you want to check out our Instagram, it's Chella Beauty. TikTok is Chella Beauty. And then, if you go to your neighborhood beauty store and we're not there, tell them you got to start carrying Chella.
Right. And I'll have all that in the show notes too with active links so everybody can, go and check it out and find you guys. Because like I said, we have a whole legion of conscious consumers coming up and they care about what their product is, where it comes from, and also that it's vegan and cruelty free. So they're your people and they're going to come for you and say hi. And, hopefully they'll say, hey, I heard you on the Wild Party podcast. But again, thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate your time. And I can't wait to actually go onto the website and buy some new stuff for my brows because I think I need a refresh.
Stephanie. Thank you. You're amazing. You're amazing. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.